We conclude today this series that I've entitled Jesus, Licensed Marriage and Family Therapist. Here's the premise of the series for those who may be guests today or haven't been here for each week of the series. There are very practical, tangible issues that we and the people around you face in our lives. And they tend to be fairly universal. If you're married, at some point you are going to struggle with your spouse. You're going to struggle to thrive in that marriage relationship. Or, if you're married and you have kids, or you're a single parent and you have kids, at some point, odds are, at a certain point in their growth, you are going to struggle with your child about how to raise them well, about how to just engender mutual respect, just to stop the yelling in your house. You want to know how to be a good parent. Your kids want to know how to be good kids. You will go through, everybody in the room, at some point, you will go through relational strain with your best friends. Something will happen with them where you will have to decide, how do I handle this? Do I end the relationship? How do we make amends? And many of us in the room would say we carry around negative emotions that deeply impact us mentally and even physiologically. These are the things that we have. Things like depression and anxiety. And they run us through to the very bottom of our soul. In our day and time, in 21st century America, we have a certain way of handling those issues. Whether they're marriage or parenting or relationship hurt or even emotional discord. We use professional counselors. We use medication. We use venting to a friend on the phone. We use modern medicine and science and psychiatry and on down the line, and these things are all good. But as I've told you at the outset of every message in this series, Jesus had none of those at his disposal. And the people he was interacting with were just like you and me. Their marriages weren't any better. They didn't get along with their kids any better. They had the same sadness and anxieties that we have. They couldn't get along with each other. They were just like us. And what did he do? To help them, to heal them, to turn their life in another direction. Well, he really only did one thing. Know what it was? He taught. This is the way it reads in John chapter 8. If you hear my teaching, you will know the truth, and the truth will set you in your life, you in those relationships, the truth will set you free. A key ingredient, apparently, to human wellness, to relational wholeness, to a good marriage, to a good home, to one that even exceeds your expectations is you need to listen to Jesus. And those things that Jesus teaches, you need to put in practice. And you know who you need to put them into practice to? Your wife, your kids, your friends. And they will change your life. Because they changed the life of those people back then 2,000 years ago, when we didn't have all the stuff that we have today. In fact, I wonder if you can be 100% well without listening to the words of Jesus and putting them into practice. So yet again, let's return to the teaching of Jesus. And this time, let's look at a passage that you might be familiar with, but not here. You might be familiar with the version of it in the Gospel of Matthew chapter 6, in the middle of what's called the Sermon on the Mount. This is how it's recorded in the Gospel of Luke chapter 12. This is Jesus speaking. And don't keep earnestly seeking for what you will eat or drink, and don't keep worrying. For it is the irreligious nations or peoples of the world around you that earnestly seek after all these things, and your heavenly Father knows that you need them. Instead, earnestly seek His kingdom, and these things will be given to you. Just initial observation, Jesus uses the same word 3 times in one paragraph, which in freshman English would get your paper returned to you. They would tell you to consult a thesaurus. In Jesus' case, he's trying to make a point. This is a passage, as we'll talk about in a minute, that is all about what you earnestly seek or strive for in your life. Do you see that? The repetition of the term tells you that. Jesus continues, "Don't be afraid, my little flock of disciples or followers, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Sell your possessions and give to God's work. Make purses for yourself that don't wear out, full of unfailing treasure in heaven, where no thief steals and no moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." Here's the thing about that passage. That, on the surface of it, doesn't seem to have anything to do with your marriage, your family, your friendships, or even your own state of mind or emotions, right? But I've told you, throughout the course of this series, one of the things I'm trying to do in this experiment is I want to change the way we all read the Bible. Because Jesus assumed that if his followers heard his teaching, in this case the teaching of Luke 12, and they began to put it into practice in the specific places of their life, like their marriage, or like their home, or like how they treated their co-workers, then their life would be remarkably changed for the better. Every time you crack the Bible, every time you read the red letters of Jesus in your Bible, you are reading something that can change the actual parts of your life, if you'll just do them. Let's think about how this passage in Luke 12 can be an extraordinary help to you in your home life, in your relationships, and so on. As I said to you when I pointed that repetition of words out, this is a passage that is, among all other things, maybe most of all, it is about one simple concept. It is about earnestly seeking. What do you strain or strive for? You see that, right? What's Jesus trying to get his listeners then and now to think about? Well, he says, on the one hand, normal people, the nations of the world, the irreligious peoples of the world in his language, they strive after a certain kind of thing. They earnestly seek something more than anything else with their lives, and it's what they eat and what they drink. It's their needs. This is what their entire life is about. When you observe the people around you, in 2013 America, what do you think they earnestly seek the most with their life? See, back in Jesus' day, you had a lot more poor people. In fact, you had a lot more dirt poor people. People who were living week to week, who did not have a savings account, who may not have known where the next meal was going to come from. So Jesus' words in his day were very apt. And there are still people like that in 2013 America. But what else do you observe? What's the passion of the lives around you? What is the one indivisible, irreducible goal of the lives around you? It's going to depend on the people you know. Vocational success could be somebody's. Vocational stability could be somebody else's. Having a job that won't be cut or taken away. What else? Happiness. We all just want to be happy. Fantastic. That's like nailing Jell-O to the wall. Right? How do you define that? But it is. That message, if nothing else, you are being bombarded with it day after day, week after week, by all the media that you consume. Happiness is the idol of America. Absolutely. What else? Well, maybe they want to just take the next step up. Maybe they want the bigger house or the newer car or the slightly larger paycheck. Maybe they want to finish their degree so they can stop being blue collar and start being white collar. Maybe they're lonely and they want to get married because they think that marriage is going to make their life so much better. These are the things that people around you seek. This is what they earnestly strive with their life for. And Jesus says that with that kind of striving comes worry, His word. You and I might use the word anxiety. He says the irreligious peoples of the world around Him in His day sought after their physical needs more than they cared about anything else. And He said what came with that is worry. Because apparently in Jesus' way of looking at the world and human life and God and all that, you can't work hard enough, you can't do enough, you can't focus enough, you can't concentrate enough to get what you want if those kinds of things are your goal. The only thing you get is more and more anxious. Do you know people like that? I bet you do. I bet you know people who work 60 hours a week and they do it to ensure the financial welfare of their family or to be able to take the nice vacation or have the timeshare. What are those people like? Would you characterize them as people who are calm, tranquil, content? Or would you say those are people who are anxious and stressed? See, in my life, it's far more the latter than the former. What about people who are in the middle of trying to scrap their way to a better job? What characterizes their life? Tranquility and serenity? Or anxiety? See, in Jesus' way of looking, if you misplace what you earnestly seek with your life, the only thing you're going to get is worry. This, all of a sudden, light bulb moment, remember the focus of the series, wow, this all of a sudden became about your moods. My depression, your anxiety. I wonder if part of why you and I walk around stressed out all the time is because we're not seeking the right things with our life. We're working hard, we're scraping up the ladder, only to find all it does is wear us out, rub us thin, leave us anxious and overwrought. Maybe one of the things you can do for your own mental health this morning is you need to change what you seek with your life. This would be the counsel of Jesus. Which also makes me think, wow, pause for a minute. I think Jesus would have wanted every listener that day when he said this in Luke 12 to ask, not just what am I seeking with my life, but I wonder what other people think my family seeks. Please notice how I said that. I didn't ask you what your answer to what your family seeks is. I'd like to know what other people think your family seeks. Because they, as third-party observers, may be a little more objective about it. So if somebody had access to your life and were to give a one-page, no longer summary of what you and your family earnestly sought, strived for, sweated for, slaved for in your life, what do you think the report would be? I don't know that my answer for my home and my family has always been the one that Jesus would say. I think sometimes it has been about my education, or more lately, my job and my wife's job, getting by financially, all the kids' stuff that tends to pile up on the calendar. These are the things that I think a third-party observer would say about my own home life. What about yours? What would somebody else say your family cares about the most? Here's the only answer that Jesus says is appropriate for someone who is trying to take to heart what he teaches and live it out, a disciple or student of his. And it's right down there at the bottom of that first paragraph. He says, do not seek what the people around you seek. You don't want your list of family goals and aims to be the same thing as everybody else around you. Instead, you need to earnestly seek what he says is God's kingdom. Fair enough. What's God's kingdom? Well, you could talk about God's kingdom a lot. It's his favorite subject of Jesus. Let's keep it simple this morning. Here's what Jesus would say about God's kingdom. Number one, when you think of kingdom, what comes to mind? Well, it's not a term actually we like a whole lot, but try to keep it benevolent when you think about it. You think of a king who can basically say, this needs to be done, and it is done. Or he's the one who makes the rules for the territory that he oversees. He protects the people in his territory and on down the road. Now make that king God. God's kingdom is all of us deciding that we together, as his followers, will live by his rules, his guidance, the things that he says is right and true and good. That's God's kingdom. God's kingdom is taking God's influence and presence and spreading it out, not just from your life, but outward to those other lives around you. Like we're going to do this Easter with Hope Day, for instance. God's kingdom is wherever he is king, where he gets the last final say about what's good and right, just and true. And you with your life say, I agree, and that's what I'm going to care about. The other thing that's very clear from this passage is that it is the opposite of caring about all that stuff other people do. Whatever God's kingdom is, here's what it's not. It's not looking after your own needs first. It's not taking care of what you want first. Jesus seems to make that abundantly clear. And please notice that promise at the end of this first paragraph comes with a rather remarkable commitment by Jesus. He says, if you as his student, if you who are listening to him and allowing him to rearrange and heal your life, if you will be willing to seek first God's kingdom, then guess what happens? God will make sure that all of your needs are taken care of. What a remarkable, strident, courageous, you might even say ridiculous promise. If I just seek first God's kingdom with my life, if my family just chose to do that together, then guess what? Our needs would be met. We'd be taken care of because God takes responsibility for them. Wow. Do you hear it in the verses? There is a tangible, practical, emotional impact that comes with doing life the way that Jesus advocates. See, all that stress and strain you have been putting on yourself to take care of what you think you need or to get what you think you want, it's killing you. And if you just make the trade, that you will instead seek first what Jesus says is God's kingdom and care about the things that God cares about the most, God says He'll make sure your needs are covered. You may not get everything you want. We don't all drive Ferraris in the kingdom. But you will get everything you need. That's peace. This is the first 3 steps of AA, applied to what you need and what you want. My life is unmanageable. I cannot make it work. Therefore, God, I plead to you to be the one to enter my life and make it click. To make it what I really wish it would be. This is the same kind of thing. God, I have worn myself out for 40 years trying to take care of myself. I have worn myself out my entire life fighting up the corporate structure, bumping from job to job to job, trying to find that one thing that makes me enough money and makes me happy enough that voila, I'm fulfilled. Get off that carousel. It's never going to stop, says Jesus. Make the trade. Make the brave, courageous trade. Have faith that what Jesus said is true. Care more about God's kingdom. I don't care what you do for a job. I don't care what vocations you and your wife have. I don't care how long or short you have to work. Forget it. That should not be what defines your life. What defines your life, O follower of Jesus, is seeking first God's kingdom. Let Him take care of everything else. Recently in the life of our church, someone here was up for a very big promotion. Like really big. Like double your money big. Like, as he said it to me, going from driving a Ford to driving an Audi big. And that person in the life of our church sought counsel and prayed. You know what they did? They turned it down. Because they're too excited about the things that God has them doing. To serve people and to care for people through our church and with our church. They said, I don't want to give that up. And I think the new promotion would make me give it up. And they said, I'd rather do what I'm doing now for God's kingdom. Forget it. I'm taken care of. My needs are met. That's a kingdom choice. That's what Jesus was talking about. Do you see what that does for your emotions alone? You carry so much less weight. What would it look like for you and your family, you and your marriage, and you with your kids to be a kingdom-first kind of family? What do you think? How about this? What are the spiritual goals for you and your family this year? What are you trying to do? What are you focused on together? What do you want to get better at? Last week we talked about forgiveness, a favorite subject of Jesus, and that the only freedom you'll ever have from the hurt done to you in this world is forgiveness. Maybe that could be the spiritual goal of your family, and it's what you talk about. In fact, you even identify the people right now in your life who are hurting you in such a way that it pains you, and you want to get back at them. And instead what you do together is you work on forgiving. That sounds like a kingdom kind of goal to me. What are the things that your family is doing for other people, or to reach out to other people, or to serve the people here at our church, or even, because it's our church and we do things the way we do, the people outside our church? How are you as a family, as a husband and a wife? What are you guys going to do for the next year to serve God's kingdom in that way? Here's the way it usually works for Christian people. They think their life is busy enough that the only thing they can care about is their work and their family. Everything else gets the scraps. Jesus doesn't look at life that way. And I assure you, the life of the listeners back then, 2,000 years ago, was way more stressed than yours. They had to worry about where the next meal was coming from. They didn't know about things like days off. They worked 70 and 80 hours a week at menial work that most of us wouldn't do. It was worse than ours. And yet to those people, Jesus said, here's what you should really care about in your life. Doing the things that God really cares about to the people around you, to your fellow followers of Jesus and to those who don't follow him yet. This is what really matters. Quite frankly, you are too stressed out not to take Jesus' advice. There is no future for you and your family if all you're going to do is try to work harder to get ahead a little more. God will continue to get the scraps from your table. There is only a dead end at the end of that path. Instead, maybe begin to revision your home life as a kingdom outpost in the world, where what your job is, more than anything else, is to have a home full of people that seeks to love and to serve the people around them in small and intermediate and big ways, whatever that might be for your home. This is the thing, according to Jesus, you should care about the most. What are you teaching your kids, by the way? Have you ever had that moment in your life where you sit on the couch 10 o'clock at night watching an NHL game and it hits you like that? What am I teaching my kids? I'm teaching them that they need to work 60 hours a week, that they need to get a good education to get a good job, that they shouldn't be satisfied if they only make $40,000 a year, that they can't be happy if they live in an older house in an older part of town. Are these the things that I'm really teaching my kids? I may never say it. You better believe I'm reinforcing it with my behavior, because they do what they see, not necessarily what they hear. I would rather my two children look at mom and dad in my home and say, those are kingdom first people. They defined their life. They got their satisfaction and fulfillment from doing what God would do in their place. For treating other people the way that Jesus would if he were in their place. By caring and serving for the people around them, yeah, even the ones nobody else likes. This is what it looks like to have a kingdom-first family and or marriage. Jesus, by the way, gives you two specific examples of what it looks like in this passage to seek first God's kingdom. Did you catch it? It was in the next paragraph. Jesus continues and says, number one, sell your possessions and give to God's work. So Jesus apparently says, if you want to make this great exchange from striving after what everybody else does and striving after instead what really matters, according to me, one of the ways you can do that is have less and give more. These are Jesus' words, not mine. It's as if, by the way, he's living in 2013 America speaking to all of us who are addicted to having stuff. The latest gadgets, the latest things, the latest technology. It's like Jesus was talking right to us. And he would say to the most materialistic society the world has ever seen, have less, give more. This is what it means to seek first God's kingdom. Sell your possessions and give to God's work. That's what he says. And then he says, you need to make sure that what you treasure in your life are the things that last, not the things that can erode or be taken away. And those are the kinds of things that we've already talked about. Things like character, who you are, your relationship with God, your spirituality, the love that you share and receive and give from those around you, the way you serve and invest in other people. These are all things that, frankly, are going to outlive your physical life. They will not only outlive your physical life in your own life, they will outlive it in the lives of other people. The ripple effect is exponential. All the other stuff that we clutter our lives with doesn't last. It breaks, it erodes, it goes away. So as you think and you percolate on the idea of, okay, I want to take Jesus up on this notion of having a kingdom-first kind of family or marriage or home or friendships, here are two images to keep in mind. He already gives all of us two very specific ways in this passage to do that. Have less, give more. There is already enough in the world if those of us who have too much would just give to those of us who have too few. That was for you, Ryan. And invest in the things that matter, the things that last. People, love, your faith. These are the things that in the end matter. If you want to begin to wrap your head around what a kingdom-first family looks like, it looks like one perhaps who at least begins to embody those two things. Oh, but that's not where it ends. It ends here in what is maybe one of the most well-known statements of Jesus. He wraps this whole thing up about what you earnestly strive for in your life. The wrong of it and now the right of it. And he says, you need to be aware that where your treasure is, your heart will be also. Here's what's remarkable about that statement. Jesus says who you are, the most important things about you, who you are internally, your heart, who you really are is actually joined to something else. And in fact, who you really are at root follows after something else. It's as if who you really are is the dog on the leash. What's the thing pulling the leash? Your treasure. Your master, the master of your whole cotton-picking life, and mine, is what you value. Because you become what you value. This is what Jesus said. See, we tend to think of it the other way around. Well, this is who I am. This is who I really am. I am this kind of person. And everybody who knows me knows that I am this kind of person, and nothing will ever change that. You're wrong. Not according to me, according to Jesus. You're wrong. One thing can fundamentally change who you actually are, who you essentially are as a human being. Know what it is? It's your treasure. It's what you value most. It has the potential to free you, to redeem you, to change you, to liberate you, and it also has the power to enslave you and warp you and skew you and make you less than a human being, to make you an ugly caricature of what we all hope to become. Your treasure, what you value most in your life, has the power to do that. So says Jesus. That means that we, in our homes, with our kids, have to begin to think about what kind of home we want to construct. And namely this, the most powerful thing that you can think about for your wife and for your kids is, what in my family would we say our treasure is? What's that thing in our life that we value the most? And we don't just say it. People could actually look in from the outside and validate that we're doing it. This is the treasure of your life. What would people say about your life? What would they say about mine? If you're living like everybody else, here's the thing. you have turned loose an exceedingly powerful magnetic force in your home. And you are going to become, and your kids are going to become, the priorities of your house. Have they watched you being the person who just wanted more and more stuff in order to be happy? That's your treasure. And if that weren't bad enough, you're going to become your treasure. And not only are you going to become more and more that kind of materialistic consumer, so are your kids. That's what Jesus would say. Where your treasure is, your heart will be also. You may need to reevaluate what the actual, real priorities of your home and family are. You may need to spend a little less. You may need to do a little less for yourselves, by yourselves. You may need to begin to look a little different than all your friends and coworkers around you. You may need to begin to replace those priorities with God's priorities, and as you do, your heart and the hearts of everybody in your home will follow suit. You want to change your life? Change your treasure. Jesus says it'll change everything about you. We are now at the end of this 4-week series where we have thought not just about the teaching of Jesus, but we've thought about how the more you think about it, the more it can actually, practically apply to and change those relationships that we all share, or many of us do. Things like marriages and family. Friendships. It can change the way that we view the world and the emotional weight that we carry and the anxieties that we have within, if we just listen to it and take it to heart. This is what I suspect. And I want to end not just today, but the whole series by saying this. I suspect that some people in the room thought, you know what? I'm a Christian. I went to church most of my life. I kind of like that Jesus guy. Even if I don't like his followers a whole lot, he seems pretty cool. Yeah, I kind of believe that he was special and he was God's son and he died on the cross and he rose from the dead, even though I can't really explain any of that. I get it. Have you kind of gotten it through the course of this series and all the talking about Jesus that we do? That is not what a Christian is. I'm not telling you you're not going to go to heaven someday. That's a different question. I'm telling you that's not what a Christian is, by the biblical definition and by Jesus' own definition. You know what a Christian is? Somebody who says, Jesus, I'm your student. I am lost in my life. I cannot make it work on my own. And everything I've been taught by the culture around me seems to make it worse, not better. So finally, the ears of my heart are open. I can't do this anymore. I want you to re-teach me life. From the ground up, I want you to tell me what's important. I want you to tell me what to do. I want you to tell me what not to do, because I can't figure this out. And then with feeble, weak, faltering steps, you fall into line after Jesus, and you walk in his footsteps. This is what it means to be a follower of Jesus. If you thought you were a Christian before you came here today, or you thought you were a Christian before this series, I got news for you. You're obligated to take the teaching of Jesus and to put it into practice towards your wife, towards your husband, towards your kids. To not do that is not to be a Christian. Maybe now you begin to sense, oh, maybe you begin to sense, frankly, what I have in my life, which is I spent a long time in church. In fact, I would have said about myself for almost all of my life, with a couple of lapses, that I have been a Christian. But it was really only when I began to say, I'm done with it. I cannot make my life work. It makes no sense. It is not healthy to me or the people around me. Therefore, Jesus, reteach me life. I am your student. Show me what to do. You have the opportunity to do that. In the quiet, as I give you some time here at the end of the message, maybe to be open to how God wants you to personally, in your life and your home, use what we talked about today. Maybe that's a question you need to pursue with God. Maybe you need to tell him you're done messing around. You're done being a Christian in name only. And you're ready. You are ready to begin to change your life by living out the teaching of Jesus. If, by the way, that is something that you want to do, we want to help you do that, please let me know. You can catch me afterward or email me, whatever's convenient, let me know, because we want to partner with you in that change. Would you take a minute in the quiet and allow God to talk to you personally and direct your thoughts and your feelings about how you need to use what we talked about today in the Gospel of Luke chapter 12. And after a few moments, I will pray for us all.